The blizzard had been raging for 3 days when 8-year-old Maya Chen first heard the crying. She pressed her face against the frosted window of her family's cabin, watching the snow pile higher against the fence posts. The wind howled like a living thing, but underneath its fury, she could swear she heard something else, something small and scared. "Mom, there's something outside," Maya called, her breath fogging the glass as she spoke. Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her research papers scattered across the kitchen table. As a xenobiologist stationed at the remote Arctic research facility, she was used to her daughter's vivid imagination during the long winter months. "It's just the storm, honey. The wind can make all sorts of strange sounds." But Maya knew the difference between wind and crying. She had been living in this isolated outpost for 2 years now, ever since her mother accepted the position studying climate adaptation in extreme environments. The crying came again, weaker this time, barely audible above the storm's rage. Without telling her mother, Maya pulled on her thick winter coat, the bright red one her grandmother had sent from Vancouver. She wrapped her favorite scarf around her neck, the one with little polar bears dancing across blue fabric. Her boots were by the door, still damp from yesterday's adventure building snow forts. The moment she opened the cabin door, the Arctic wind slammed into her like a physical force. Snow stung her cheeks and made her eyes water, but Maya pushed forward into the white chaos. The crying was clearer now, coming from somewhere near the equipment shed behind their cabin. Each step was a struggle against the knee-deep snow. Maya's small legs worked hard to push through the drifts, following the sound that seemed to tug at something deep in her chest. She had always been drawn to creatures in need. Last summer, she had rescued a baby bird with a broken wing, nursing it back to health in a shoebox until it could fly again. Behind the shed, partially buried in a snowdrift, Maya found something that made her gasp. It wasn't human, but it wasn't like any animal she had ever seen either. The creature was small, about the size of a human toddler, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim stormlight. Its eyes were large and silver, filled with tears that froze on its cheeks before they could fall. Strange markings covered its forehead, looking almost like delicate frost patterns etched into its skin. The creature's clothing was unlike anything Maya had seen. The fabric looked advanced, possibly designed for extreme cold, but it was torn and provided little protection against the brutal Arctic storm. The small being shivered violently, its breathing shallow and rapid. Maya didn't hesitate. Without thinking about how strange the situation was or what this creature might be, she immediately began unwrapping her red coat. The cold bit into her instantly, but she ignored it, focusing only on the frightened being before her. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if the creature could understand her words. "I'm here to help." She carefully wrapped her warm coat around the small form, tucking the sleeves around its tiny body. The creature's silver eyes widened in surprise, looking up at Maya with an expression that seemed to hold both fear and desperate hope. The moment her coat touched the creature's skin, something remarkable happened. The blue tinge began to fade from its face, and its violent shivering started to subside. Maya pulled her scarf off and gently wrapped it around the creature's head, covering ears that were pointed and delicate, unlike human ears. "There," Maya said softly, her own teeth beginning to chatter as the cold seeped through her thin sweater. "That's better, isn't it?" The creature made a soft sound, almost like a purr mixed with a musical note. Its small hand, with fingers longer than human fingers, reached out and touched Maya's arm. Despite the language barrier, gratitude was clear in its gestures. Maya knew she needed to get both of them inside quickly. The storm was getting worse, and without her coat, she wouldn't last long in the brutal cold. But the creature was so small and clearly weak from exposure. She wasn't sure it could walk through the deep snow. Making a decision that would change everything, Maya scooped the small being into her arms. It was lighter than she expected, and despite its alien appearance, it felt fragile and precious, like holding a wounded bird. The creature didn't resist, instead curling closer to Maya's warmth, tiny hands gripping her sweater. The journey back to the cabin felt endless. Maya's muscles ached from carrying the additional weight through the snow, and the cold was becoming dangerous without her protective coat. But every time she looked down at the small face peering up at her from within the red fabric, she found the strength to take another step. The creature's breathing had stabilized, and color was returning to its unusual features. Its silver eyes never left Maya's face, as if memorizing every detail of the human child who had chosen to help, rather than run away in fear. By the time Maya reached the cabin door, her lips were blue and her hands were numb. She struggled with the door handle, her fingers refusing to work properly in the cold. The creature seemed to understand her difficulty and made soft, encouraging sounds, as if trying to help in the only way it could. Finally, the door opened, and warm air rushed out to embrace them both. Maya stumbled inside, still carrying her precious cargo, leaving a trail of snow and ice behind them. "Maya, where have you been?"
"I was worried sick."
Dr. Chen's voice stopped abruptly as she saw what her daughter was carrying. The xenobiologist's training kicked in immediately, her scientific mind cataloging the impossible sight before her. "Mom," Maya said through chattering teeth. "I found him in the snow. He was crying and so cold. I think he's lost." Dr. Chen stared at the small alien being wrapped in her daughter's coat, watching as it looked around their cabin with wide, intelligent eyes. In all her years of research, she had never encountered anything like this. The implications were staggering, but right now all she could focus on was the fact that her 8-year-old daughter had just saved what appeared to be an extraterrestrial child from freezing to death in an Arctic blizzard. The creature made another soft musical sound, and Maya smiled despite her cold and exhaustion. "I think he's trying to say thank you," she whispered, gently stroking the strange markings on the being's forehead. "You're safe now. We'll take care of you." Dr. Sarah Chen's hands trembled as she reached for her medical kit, though whether from excitement or fear she couldn't tell. Her scientific training warred with her maternal instincts as she watched her daughter carefully lower the alien child onto their living room couch. The creature's silver eyes tracked every movement, alert and intelligent despite its obvious exhaustion. "Maya, step back slowly," Dr. Chen instructed, her voice carefully controlled. "We don't know if it might be dangerous or carrying unknown pathogens." But Maya shook her head stubbornly, settling down beside the couch instead. "He's not dangerous, Mom. He's just scared and cold. Look at him." The alien child was indeed a pitiful sight. Even wrapped in Maya's bright red coat, it was clear the creature had been through an ordeal. Its pale blue skin was mottled with darker patches that Dr. Chen recognized as signs of severe cold exposure. The delicate frost pattern markings on its forehead seemed to pulse faintly, like a slow heartbeat. Dr. Chen approached cautiously, her scientific instruments in hand. The creature watched her with those remarkable silver eyes but showed no signs of aggression. When she moved closer, it actually pressed itself back against the couch cushions, clearly afraid. "It's okay," Maya said softly, placing her small hand near the alien's wrapped form. "This is my mom. She's a doctor. She helps creatures that are hurt." To Dr. Chen's amazement, the alien child seemed to understand the reassuring tone, if not the words. Its posture relaxed slightly, though it kept its large eyes fixed on the approaching adult. Dr. Chen began her examination carefully, starting with non-invasive observations. The creature's breathing was steady now that it was warm, and its body temperature seemed to be stabilizing. Its anatomy was humanoid but clearly different. The elongated fingers, pointed ears, and that strange blue skin that shimmered with an almost metallic quality spoke of evolution on a world very different from Earth. "Mom, look at his clothes," Maya pointed out. "They're really weird but kind of cool." The alien child's garments were indeed fascinating. The fabric appeared to be some kind of advanced material, possibly designed for temperature regulation. Despite being torn, Dr. Chen could see intricate patterns woven into the cloth that seemed to shift and change as the light hit them differently. The technology was clearly beyond anything Earth had developed. As Dr. Chen worked, the alien child began to make soft sounds. Not quite words, but musical tones that seemed to carry meaning. Maya responded instinctively, humming back in a gentle voice. The creature's eyes brightened and it made more elaborate sounds, almost like a song. "I think he's trying to talk to me," Maya said with wonder. "Listen, Mom." The alien child raised one small hand and pointed to itself, making a specific sequence of melodic tones. Then it pointed to Maya and attempted to mimic her humming, though the sounds that came out were unlike anything human vocal cords could produce. "He's telling us his name," Dr. Chen realized, her scientific excitement overriding her caution. "And he's asking for yours." Maya smiled broadly and pointed to herself. "Maya," she said clearly. "My name is Maya." The alien child tried to repeat the word, but it came out as a series of musical notes that somehow captured the essence of her name. Then it pointed to itself again and repeated its own melodic identifier. "I'm going to call you Cree," Maya announced, shortening the complex musical phrase to something she could pronounce. "Is that okay?" The creature that was now Cree seemed pleased with this arrangement, making what could only be described as happy sounds. It was then that Dr. Chen noticed something that made her scientific heart race. The frost pattern markings on Cree's forehead were changing, becoming more intricate and vibrant. They pulsed with a soft inner light that seemed to respond to the alien child's emotional state. "Maya, I need to contact the research station," Dr. Chen said, pulling out her communication device. "This is the most significant discovery in human history. The scientific community needs to know immediately." But as she began to dial, a massive hand slammed against their cabin window. Both humans froze as they saw a figure in an enormous white environmental suit peering in. The helmet was too reflective to see the face inside, but the posture was clearly aggressive. Cree's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The small creature began to shake violently, making sounds of pure terror. Its markings flashed bright red and it tried to scramble off the couch, tangling in Maya's coat. No, it's okay," Maya said quickly, wrapping her arms protectively around Cree. "I won't let anyone hurt you." More figures appeared outside the cabin, moving with military precision through the snow. Dr. Chen realized with growing dread that these weren't fellow researchers. The suits were too advanced, the movements too coordinated. This was some kind of special operations team. The cabin door exploded inward without warning. Snow and cold air rushed in as figures in white armor stormed into their home. The lead figure raised a weapon unlike anything Dr. Chen had ever seen, its barrel glowing with an ominous blue light. "Step away from the alien entity," a mechanically distorted voice commanded from the helmet's speakers. "By order of the Intergalactic Enforcement Division, you are harboring a fugitive." Dr. Chen's mind reeled. Intergalactic Enforcement Division? These weren't human authorities. These were aliens themselves, dressed in technology that made Cree's torn clothing look primitive by comparison. Maya held Cree tighter, her 8-year-old mind struggling to process what was happening. "He's not a fugitive. He's just a little kid who was lost in the snow." The lead enforcer turned its attention to Maya, and she could feel the weight of an alien intelligence studying her. "The entity is a Class 5 telepathic being from the Zephyrian system. It was being transported to a containment facility when it escaped during an emergency landing. It is extremely dangerous." "You're wrong," Maya shouted, surprising everyone with her fierce tone. "Cree isn't dangerous. He's scared and hurt and alone. He just needed help." Cree pressed closer to Maya, its markings now a deep purple that spoke of profound fear and sadness. It made soft sounds that seemed to be trying to communicate something important. But the enforcers weren't interested in listening. "The entity has clearly used its psychic abilities to manipulate these humans," another enforcer stated. "Standard protocol requires immediate extraction and mind-wiping of all witnesses." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her protective instincts fully engaged. "You will not harm my daughter. Whatever authority you think you have here, you're on Earth soil, and these are Earth citizens." The lead enforcer seemed amused by this declaration. "Your primitive planet has no rights in this matter. The entity must be returned to custody, and your memories must be erased to prevent cultural contamination." But as the enforcers moved forward, something unexpected happened. Cree's markings suddenly blazed with brilliant white light, and a wave of energy pulsed out from the small alien. Every piece of electronic equipment in the cabin sparked and died, including the enforcer's sophisticated weaponry. In the sudden darkness, lit only by Cree's glowing markings, Maya heard the alien child's voice in her mind for the first time. Not words, but pure emotion and meaning flowing directly into her thoughts. "Thank you for kindness. Thank you for warmth. You saved me when I was dying. Now I save you." The enforcers stumbled backward, their equipment failing them at a crucial moment. In that confusion, Dr. Chen grabbed her emergency beacon and activated it, sending out a distress signal to every research station and military installation within 1,000 miles. "Maya, hold on to Cree and don't let go," she commanded, grabbing supplies from their emergency kit. "We're leaving now." The emergency tunnels beneath the research station had been built for evacuation during extreme weather, but Dr. Chen never imagined she would be using them to escape alien enforcers. Maya crawled ahead through the narrow passage, still wrapped around Cree, whose glowing markings provided their only light in the underground darkness. "Mom, how much further?" Maya whispered, her voice echoing off the metal walls. Almost there, sweetheart. Just keep moving toward the main facility. Behind them, they could hear the enforcers regrouping, their equipment apparently recovering from Kree's electromagnetic pulse. Heavy footsteps and alien voices filtered down through the ventilation system above, searching for their escaped quarry. Kree had been silent since his desperate defense of them, his energy clearly drained from the effort. But Maya could feel something different about him now. Where before there had been only fear and confusion, she sensed a growing determination. The small alien was no longer just a victim seeking help. He was beginning to remember who he was. They emerged into the main research facility through a maintenance hatch in the basement. Dr. Chen immediately moved to the communication array, desperately trying to contact the outside world. But Kree's electromagnetic pulse had affected more than just the Enforcer's equipment. Most of the facility systems were down. The backup generator should restore partial power soon, Dr. Chen muttered, working frantically with the controls. Maya, take Kree to the xenobiology lab. There are better scanners there. I need to understand what we're dealing with. The xenobiology lab was Dr. Chen's domain, filled with equipment designed to study life forms adapted to extreme environments. As they entered, Kree's markings pulsed brighter and he made excited musical sounds. He seemed to recognize some of the equipment, though that should have been impossible. Maya helped Kree onto an examination table, and he willingly submitted to the scanning procedures. As the machines hummed to life on backup power, an incredible picture began to emerge on the monitors. This is impossible, Dr. Chen breathed, staring at the readouts. His brain activity is off the charts. The neural pathways are far more complex than human patterns. And there's some kind of quantum field resonance happening in his cerebral cortex. Kree looked at the displays with interest, then began making more complex musical sounds. As he did, the patterns on the screens changed, showing that he was somehow consciously controlling his own brainwaves. Mom, I think he's trying to show us something, Maya observed. Kree, are you trying to tell us about yourself? The young alien nodded, then closed his large silver eyes in concentration. His markings blazed brighter, and suddenly the lab's holographic display system activated, despite being damaged by the electromagnetic pulse. Three-dimensional images filled the air above them. A beautiful world with purple skies and silver cities that seemed to grow from crystalline structures. Beings that looked like adult versions of Kree, with the same shimmering blue skin and intricate facial markings, moved through gardens of plants that swayed without wind. This is where you're from, Maya said with wonder. It's beautiful. The images shifted, showing what was clearly a family group. Two tall beings that had to be Kree's parents stood with several smaller ones, all displaying the complex light patterns on their foreheads. Kree pointed to the smallest figure in the hologram, then to himself. But the peaceful scene changed abruptly. Dark ships appeared in the purple sky and the silver cities began to burn. The holographic family ran, carrying the smallest child as explosions rocked their world. The images became chaotic, showing desperate escape attempts and the separation of families. They were refugees, Dr. Chen realized. Kree's people were fleeing some kind of disaster or war. The final images showed a transport ship damaged and falling through space, emergency pods ejecting as the vessel broke apart. One pod, smaller than the rest, crashed into Earth's Arctic region during the blizzard. You were in that pod, Maya said softly, understanding. You crashed here and your family doesn't know where you are. Kree's markings shifted to deep blue, conveying profound sadness. He made soft sounds that needed no translation. He was alone, separated from everything he had ever known, on a world where he couldn't even breathe the air properly without technological assistance. The holographic display flickered and died, as Kree's energy was exhausted. The small alien swayed on the examination table and Maya quickly moved to support him. It's okay, she said gently. We'll help you find your family. Won't we, Mom? Dr. Chen was studying the data from the scanners, her expression troubled. Maya, according to these readings, Kree isn't just lost. He's dying. His biology isn't compatible with Earth's environment. The atmospheric composition, the gravitational field, even the electromagnetic radiation from our sun is slowly poisoning him. But there has to be something we can do. Maya protested. He survived this long. Only because his escape pod had environmental systems that kept him alive initially. But those systems were damaged in the crash. Without proper medical intervention from his own people, he has maybe days, not weeks. Alarms suddenly blared through the facility. On the security monitors, they could see the alien enforcers had breached the main entrance. These beings moved with deadly purpose, their advanced weapons restored to functionality. Dr. Chen, a mechanical voice echoed through the facility's speakers. You cannot hide forever. Return the fugitive and your memories will be cleanly erased. Continue to resist and we will be forced to use more aggressive extraction methods. Maya looked down at Kree, who was struggling to stay conscious. His markings were fading and his breathing had become labored again. The small alien was running out of time, and now they were trapped between his failing biology and the enforcers who wanted to take him back to some kind of prison. Why do they want him so badly? Maya asked. He's just a child. Dr. Chen was still analyzing the scanner data when she found something that made her gasp. Maya, look at this neural pattern analysis. Kree isn't just telepathic. His brain is generating quantum field fluctuations that are affecting reality itself. When he defended us earlier, he didn't just create an electromagnetic pulse. He temporarily altered the fundamental forces holding those weapons together. What does that mean? It means Kree might be one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and he doesn't even know it yet. That's why the enforcers want him. Not as a prisoner, but as a weapon. The facility shook as the enforcers began cutting through the laboratory's reinforced doors. Maya wrapped her arms around Kree, feeling his small body trembling with exhaustion and fear. I won't let them take you, she whispered. I promise. Kree's eyes opened slightly, and for a moment Maya felt that strange mental connection again. This time, instead of just emotion, she sensed actual communication. Maya, friend, you showed kindness when others showed fear. You gave warmth when the cold would have taken life. Among my people, this creates a soul bond that cannot be broken. Your spirit is now part of mine, and mine is part of yours. Whatever comes, we face together. The laboratory doors exploded inward, and the enforcers poured in, weapons raised. But Maya stood her ground, still protecting Kree with her small body. You want him? She said with 8-year-old defiance. You'll have to go through me first. The lead enforcer paused, its weapon trained on the human child. Step aside. You do not understand the forces you are interfering with. Maybe not, Maya replied. But I understand that friends protect each other, and Kree is my friend. Behind them, Dr. Chen made a desperate decision. She activated the facility's emergency beacon, broadcasting on every frequency she could access, sending out the scanner data and holographic recordings to every scientific institution on Earth. If you want to stop a little girl from protecting someone she cares about, Dr. Chen said firmly, then the whole world is going to know about it. The data transmission had lasted only seconds before the enforcers shut it down, but those seconds changed everything. Across the globe, scientific institutions, military installations, and government facilities received Dr. Chen's emergency broadcast. The proof of alien life, the recordings of Kree's world, and the scanner data showing his incredible abilities spread through the world's networks like wildfire. In the laboratory, the lead enforcer lowered its weapon slightly, receiving what appeared to be urgent communications through its helmet system. Maya could hear fragments of mechanical voices speaking in languages that made no sense to human ears. The situation has become complicated, the enforcer announced. Your primitive planet's information networks have been contaminated with classified data. This now requires broader intervention protocols. Dr. Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic air. What kind of intervention protocols? Memory modification on a planetary scale, the enforcer replied matter-of-factly. Your species will be set back approximately 50 years in technological development to ensure the classified information cannot be properly understood or utilized. Maya's grip on Kree tightened. The small alien was barely conscious now, his markings flickering like a dying flame. But at the enforcer's words, his eyes snapped open, blazing with silver light. No, came a voice that was both Kree's musical tones and something that spoke directly into their minds. I will not allow harm to come to those who showed kindness. The enforcer stepped back as Kree struggled to sit up on the examination table. Entity designation Kree-Tel Norath. You are in violation of containment protocols. Your emotional attachment to these primitive beings is compromising your judgment. Kree-Tel Norath. Maya repeated softly. That's your real name? The young alien turned to her, and Maya saw something new in his silver eyes. not just the frightened child she had rescued from the snow, but the awakening of something far more powerful and ancient than his apparent age suggested. Among my people, names carry the history of the soul, Kree's mental voice explained. Kree Tel Norath means one who brings light to dark places. But you, Maya friend, you may call me simply Kree, for in your kindness, you have given me a new name and a new purpose. The markings on Kree's forehead began to pulse with increasing intensity, and the very air in the laboratory started to shimmer. Dr. Chen's instruments went haywire as energy fields beyond human understanding began to manifest around the small alien. Entity, you are too weak to sustain a quantum field manifestation of this magnitude, the lead enforcer warned, genuine concern creeping into its mechanical voice. You will cause permanent damage to your neural pathways. Then so be it, Kree replied, sliding down from the examination table to stand beside Maya. Despite his small stature and obvious exhaustion, there was something infinitely dignified about his posture. These humans risked their safety to protect me when I was helpless. I will not allow them to suffer for their compassion. Maya felt power building around Kree like the moment before lightning strikes, but there was something wrong. The scanner readouts showed his life signs fluctuating wildly. Using his abilities in his weakened state was killing him faster than the environmental incompatibility. Kree, stop, Maya pleaded. You're hurting yourself. Some things are worth the pain, Maya friend. My people believe that a life without honor is not a life worth living. You taught me what honor means among humans. The energy field expanded, and suddenly everyone in the laboratory could see through Kree's eyes. They witnessed memories of his rescue, felt the warmth of Maya's coat around his freezing body, experienced the moment when a human child chose to help rather than fear what was different. But they also saw something else. Through Kree's enhanced perception, they could see the enforcers not as faceless authorities but as individuals. Maya gasped as she realized these beings weren't evil. They were afraid. You're scared, she said, looking directly at the lead enforcer. You're scared of Kree, but not because he's dangerous. You're scared because you don't understand him. The enforcer's helmet retracted, revealing a face that was almost human, but with skin like polished metal and eyes that held no iris or pupil, just swirling galaxies of light. The entity's abilities are beyond current scientific understanding. Beings with his level of quantum manipulation have historically become destroyers of worlds. But Kree isn't a destroyer, Dr. Chen interjected, her scientific mind working furiously. Look at the data. Every time he's used his abilities, it's been to protect or communicate, never to harm. His power is shaped by his emotional state, and Maya's kindness has given him a foundation of compassion. Through the psychic connection, Maya felt Kree's surprise at this observation. He had never thought about how his emotions affected his abilities. In his people's culture, power was something to be contained and controlled. But Maya's friendship had shown him that power could also be guided by love. Among my people, Kree explained to the enforcers, we are taught that great power requires great isolation. That to be close to others is to risk losing control. But Maya friend has shown me that connection can make us stronger, not weaker. The enforcer's galaxy eyes swirled with uncertainty. This is unprecedented. Our protocols have no provision for entities who develop emotional stability through alien contact. Maybe your protocols are wrong, Maya said with the blunt honesty that only children possess. Maybe instead of being scared of people who are different, you should try to understand them. Alarms began blaring from the enforcer's equipment. Through their communication systems, reports were flooding in from around the globe. The data Dr. Chen had broadcast wasn't just being studied by scientists. Humanity was responding with characteristic unpredictability. In 12 different countries, children were building snow sculptures that looked remarkably like Kree. Artists were creating paintings inspired by his homeworld. Musicians were composing pieces that somehow captured the musical quality of his language. The story of the little alien rescued by a human girl was spreading through social media faster than any government could contain it. The contamination is spreading exponentially, one of the other enforcers reported. The human population is responding with creative interpretation rather than fear. This has never been observed in first contact scenarios. Maya felt Kree's amazement as he witnessed humanity's reaction through the enforcer's monitoring systems. His people had always been received with either fear or attempts at exploitation. But Earth's children were making art about him. Earth's people were celebrating his existence rather than demanding his destruction. This changes the evaluation parameters significantly, the lead enforcer admitted. If the entity can maintain stability through positive emotional bonding with this species, it may represent a new form of symbiotic development. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her protective instincts still on high alert, but her scientific curiosity overwhelming her caution. What exactly is Kree? What makes him so different from others of his kind? The enforcer's expression became troubled. Kree Tel-Norath is what we call a nexus being. Once every 1,000 generations, a child is born with the ability to affect the fundamental quantum strings that hold reality together. Most nexus beings are driven mad by their power and become cosmic threats. We have standing orders to contain them before they reach full maturity. But Kree isn't mad, Maya protested. He's just scared and lonely. Yes, the enforcer agreed, its voice filled with something like wonder. And that may be the most significant discovery in galactic history. A nexus being stabilized by compassionate contact with an alien species. The implications are staggering. The communication device on the lead enforcer's arm began flashing urgent signals. As the being listened to the incoming transmissions, its metallic features showed increasing concern. Maya watched as what appeared to be an argument broke out among the enforcers, their voices creating a symphony of mechanical tones and alien languages. What's happening? Dr. Chen asked, moving closer to Maya and Kree. The lead enforcer's galaxy eyes dimmed with what could only be interpreted as distress. We are receiving reports from 17 different sectors. The data your planet broadcast has reached other species, and they are demanding an immediate council session. The discovery of a stable nexus being has implications that extend far beyond your world. Kree swayed on his feet, and Maya quickly moved to support him. His markings were now barely visible and his breathing had become increasingly labored. The effort of maintaining the psychic connection and defending them was consuming what little energy he had left. He needs help, Maya said urgently. Can't you see he's dying? The enforcer approached slowly, its weapon lowered. The entity's biological systems are failing due to environmental incompatibility. However, our medical facilities can stabilize him during transport to a proper medical facility. Transport where? Dr. Chen demanded. You said yourself that he might be the most important discovery in galactic history. What happens to him now? Before the enforcer could answer, the laboratory filled with a brilliant blue light. When the light faded, 3 new figures stood in the room. These beings were clearly of Kree's species, but adult, their blue skin shimmering with health and their forehead markings creating complex patterns of light. The center figure, a tall being with markings that seemed to tell an intricate story across their features, stepped forward. Kree Tel-Norath, the being said, its musical voice filled with desperate relief. My child, we have been searching for you across star systems. Kree's eyes widened and his markings flared brighter than they had since his rescue. Mother Singer? He whispered, using his people's term for parent. The reunion was beautiful and heartbreaking. Kree's mother enveloped him in her arms, and the musical sounds they made together created harmonies that seemed to heal the very air around them. But Maya felt a deep sadness growing in her heart. She had known this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt to say goodbye. You found me, Kree sang to his mother in their musical language, though Maya somehow understood every note. I was lost and cold and afraid, but Maya friend saved me. She gave me her warmth and showed me kindness when I had nothing. Kree's mother looked at Maya with eyes that held the depth of galaxies. You are the human child who protected our son? Maya nodded, suddenly feeling very small and very human in the presence of these magnificent beings. I just helped him. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, young one, another of the adult beings said, approaching Maya with reverence. We have studied your species' response to our son's presence. Most beings react to a nexus entity with fear or greed. You alone responded with pure compassion. The lead enforcer stepped forward, its posture showing deep respect for the newcomers. Council members, we must address the security implications of this contact. The human population has been exposed to classified information about nexus beings. Kree's mother turned to face the enforcer, and Maya felt the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. Enforcer Thane, my son was dying on this world, abandoned and alone. This human child risked her own safety to save him. And your concern is security protocols? With respect, Council Member Area. The entity's abilities pose a significant threat if not properly contained. Our simulations suggest your simulations, interrupted the third adult being, whose markings seemed to shift like flowing water, failed to predict that a Nexus being could achieve stability through emotional bonding with an alien species. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our assumptions. Dr. Chen had been quietly recording everything, her scientific mind struggling to process the magnitude of what she was witnessing. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, "but I need to understand something. You said Kree is a Nexus being, someone who can affect reality itself, but he's just a child. How is that possible?" Council member Arya's expression softened. "Among our people, great power often manifests in youth, before the mind learns to impose limitations upon itself. Kree Norath's abilities began emerging during our evacuation from our homeworld. The trauma of losing our planet amplified his powers exponentially. Which is why," Enforcer Thane continued, "containment protocols exist. Traumatized Nexus beings have historically become reality-breaking threats. The young entity should have been isolated immediately." "But he wasn't isolated," Maya said, stepping forward with the fearless honesty of childhood. "He was alone and scared. That's not the same thing as being safely contained. That's just being abandoned." Kree looked up at Maya from his mother's arms, his silver eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper. "Maya, friend speaks truth. In my loneliness, I was losing myself to the darkness between thoughts. Her kindness became my anchor to sanity." The watermarked being nodded slowly. "This is unprecedented. A Nexus being stabilized not through isolation and control, but through connection and compassion. The therapeutic implications alone could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness manipulation." Alarms suddenly filled the laboratory again. But these were different from before. Dr. Chen checked her instruments and paled. "Those are proximity alerts. Something big is approaching our position." Through the facility's windows, they could see lights descending from the sky. Not the harsh mechanical lights of the enforcement ships, but something that seemed to pulse with organic rhythm. As the objects landed, Maya realized they weren't ships at all, but creatures. Living beings the size of buildings, with skin that shifted colors like aurora borealis. "The Galactic Council has arrived," Council member Arya announced, a note of concern in her musical voice. "Word of Kree Norath's stabilization has reached the highest levels of interspecies government. They will want to study this phenomenon." Maya felt Kree tense in his mother's arms. Through their mental connection, she sensed his fear returning. The idea of being studied, probed, and analyzed terrified him more than dying alone in the snowhead. "What will they do to him?" Maya asked, though she dreaded the answer. Enforcer Thane's expression was grim. "Standard protocol for Nexus. Being research involves comprehensive neural mapping, controlled power manifestation trials, and psychological conditioning to prevent reality destabilization events." "That sounds horrible," Maya said bluntly. "It sounds like they want to turn him into a weapon." "Not a weapon," the watermarked being corrected. "A tool. There are cosmic threats that only Nexus beings can address. If Kree Norath's abilities can be properly understood and controlled, he could help protect billions of lives across the galaxy." Maya looked at Kree, seeing the small, frightened child she had rescued from the snow rather than the cosmic entity everyone else seemed to see. What if he doesn't want to be a tool? What if he just wants to be a kid? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Outside, the massive council creatures were extending tendrils and appendages, setting up what appeared to be a mobile research facility. Scientists and officials from dozens of species were emerging from organic transport pods, all eager to study the unprecedented phenomenon of a stable Nexus being. Kree looked up at Maya, his markings creating patterns she had never seen before. "Maya, friend, they will take me away now. To places where I can learn to control what I am. But I want you to know your kindness has shown me something my people thought was impossible. Power and connection can exist together. Will I ever see you again?" Maya asked, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. Before anyone could answer, something remarkable happened. The bond between Maya and Kree, forged in compassion and strengthened by adversity, suddenly became visible. Lines of silver light connected their hearts, pulsing with the rhythm of their shared emotions. Every being in the laboratory stepped back in awe. Even Enforcer Thane's mechanical voice carried wonder. "This is impossible. Nexus beings cannot form stable psychic bonds with non-Nexus individuals. The power differential should make such connections lethal to the weaker mind. But Maya felt no pain, only warmth and connection. She understood then that their friendship had created something entirely new in the galaxy, a bridge between human compassion and cosmic power that no one had thought possible. "Perhaps," said Council Member Arya thoughtfully, "it is time for new possibilities." The silver light connecting Maya and Kree pulsed stronger as more galactic council members entered the laboratory. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space, their various forms ranging from crystalline beings that chimed like music to gaseous entities contained in environmental suits. Each one stared at the impossible sight of a human child psychically bonded to a Nexus being. Dr. Chen found herself taking detailed notes on every species present, her scientific training overriding her concern for the moment. This was the greatest xenobiological discovery in human history, and it was happening in her laboratory because her 8-year-old daughter had chosen kindness over fear. A being that resembled a walking tree of liquid mercury approached the group, its voice like wind through silver leaves. "I am Coordinator Flux of the Council's Nexus Research Division. In 3,000 years of documented Nexus being manifestations, we have never observed stable bonding with a non-Nexus entity. This could change everything we understand about consciousness and reality manipulation." Maya stepped protectively closer to Kree, who was still weak in his mother's arms. "Are you going to hurt him? Because if you are, you'll have to deal with me first." The threat from an 8-year-old human to beings capable of destroying planets should have been laughable. Instead, every council member present seemed to take her words seriously. The silver bond between her and Kree flared brighter, and several of the more sensitive species actually stepped back. "Fascinating," Coordinator Flux observed. "The human child's protective instincts are amplifying the Nexus being's defensive capabilities. Standard containment protocols would be ineffective in this scenario." Council Member Arya shifted her son more securely in her arms, her own markings beginning to glow with protective patterns. "My child has been through enough trauma. He nearly died on this world and only survived because of this human's compassion. I will not allow him to be subjected to invasive research procedures." "With respect, Council Member," said a being that looked like living starlight contained in a vaguely humanoid form. "The implications of this bonding phenomenon extend beyond personal concerns. If Nexus beings can achieve stability through alien contact, it could prevent the isolation protocols that drive so many of them to madness." Dr. Chen looked up from her notes. "Isolation protocols? You deliberately isolate children with these abilities?" Enforcer Thane's mechanical voice carried what might have been regret. "Nexus beings who form emotional attachments historically become unstable when those attachments are threatened or lost. Isolation prevents attachment formation, theoretically maintaining psychological stability." "But that's not stability," Maya protested with the clear logic of childhood. "That's just being alone and sad. Kree wasn't stable when I found him. He was dying and scared." Kree stirred in his mother's arms, his markings flickering as he tried to speak. "Maya friend speaks truth. In my loneliness, my powers grew chaotic. I could not control them because I had no anchor, no reason to maintain control. Her friendship gave me purpose beyond my own fear." Coordinator Flux's mercury-like surface rippled with what appeared to be excitement. "This suggests that the traditional isolation model may actually be counterproductive. If emotional bonds can provide stability rather than threatening it, we may have been approaching Nexus being development completely wrong." The crystalline being that had been silent until now chimed in with notes that sounded like a complex musical argument. Maya didn't understand the language, but she felt its meaning through her connection with Kree. The being was advocating for immediate separation of the bonded pair to prevent what it called reality cascade contamination. "They want to separate us," Maya said, understanding flooding through her. "They're afraid that if other humans bond with beings like Kree, it will change things too much." The watermarked council member nodded gravely. "Change on this scale could destabilize interspecies relations across the galaxy. If humans prove capable of forming stable bonds with Nexus beings, it could shift the balance of cosmic power significantly." Dr. Chen stood up, her protective instincts finally overriding her scientific fascination. "So this is all about politics? About maintaining some kind of galactic status quo? My daughter saves a dying child out of pure compassion? And you want to punish them both for it?" Not punishment, Coordinator Flux corrected. Research. If we can understand the mechanism behind this bonding, we might be able to replicate it safely. But that requires studying both subjects extensively. Maya felt Kree's fear spike through their connection, and her own anger rose in response. The silver light between them began to pulse with dangerous intensity, and several pieces of equipment in the laboratory started to hum with excess energy. Maya, friend, Kree whispered, his mental voice filled with concern. Your emotions are affecting my abilities. The bond makes your feelings into my power. This observation sent shockwaves through the assembled council members. A human child was not just stabilizing a Nexus being, but actually influencing his reality-altering capabilities through emotional resonance. This is beyond unprecedented, the Starlight being said, its voice carrying awe and terror in equal measure. The human's emotional state is directly controlling Nexus-level quantum manipulation. The implications are staggering. Maya tried to calm herself, and as she did, the energy in the room stabilized. But the demonstration had made something clear to everyone present. She and Kree were no longer just a curious phenomenon. They had become something that could reshape the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Council member Arya's voice carried the authority of absolute determination. I will not allow my son to become a laboratory specimen, regardless of the cosmic implications. He has suffered enough. And I won't let them hurt Kree, Maya added, her young voice carrying surprising strength. He's my friend, and friends protect each other. The assembled council members began debating among themselves in dozens of languages, their voices creating a cacophony of sound that somehow managed to be both beautiful and terrifying. Through it all, Maya held Kree's gaze, their bond providing comfort in the chaos. Suddenly, the debate stopped. Every being in the laboratory turned to stare at something behind Maya. She turned to see that the laboratory's holographic display had activated again. But this time it wasn't showing Kree's memories. Images of Earth filled the air. Children from every continent making art inspired by Kree's story. Scientists working together on projects they called compassion. Protocols. World leaders calling for the establishment of Earth as a sanctuary for lost or traumatized alien children. Your species' response continues to exceed all predictive models. Coordinator Flux observed. Rather than fear or attempts at exploitation, humanity is responding with systematic kindness and protective instincts. Dr. Chen smiled with pride. That's what humans do. When we see someone in need, especially a child, our first instinct is to help, not to study them like specimens. This complicates the situation significantly, the crystalline being chimed. If Earth is declaring itself a sanctuary world, and if humans can indeed provide stability for Nexus beings through emotional bonding, the entire foundation of our containment policies becomes questionable. Maya felt a surge of hope through her connection with Kree. Does that mean we can stay together? Council member Arya looked around the room at the assembled representatives, her galaxy eyes holding both hope and determination. Perhaps it is time to try something that has never been attempted before. Perhaps it is time to let compassion guide policy rather than fear. The silence that followed was pregnant with possibility. For the first time in galactic history, the treatment of Nexus beings was being reconsidered not because of force or political pressure, but because an 8-year-old human girl had chosen kindness over fear in a snowstorm. 6 months later, Maya stood in the newly constructed Compassion Center, watching Kree play with a group of children from 7 different species. His blue skin had regained its healthy shimmer, and his markings now told complex stories of joy and belonging rather than fear and isolation. The silver bond between them had settled into a comfortable warmth that no longer surprised the galactic community. The Compassion Center had been built where Dr. Chen's research station once stood, but now it sprawled across several acres of Arctic landscape. Dome-shaped buildings designed by Earth's best architects working with alien engineers created environments suitable for dozens of different species. Gardens grew under controlled atmospheric conditions, allowing beings from various worlds to feel at home while learning to live together. Dr. Chen approached Maya, carrying a tablet filled with the day's reports. As the center's chief administrator, she had traded her xenobiology research for something far more rewarding, helping traumatized alien children find healing through human compassion. How's our progress report looking? Maya asked. Though at 9 years old, she was still learning to read the complex data streams that track the center's success rates. Remarkable, Dr. Chen replied, genuinely amazed even after months of positive results. We now have 43 Nexus beings in residence, ranging in age from the equivalent of toddlers to young adults. Not a single case of reality destabilization has occurred since the program began. Through the transparent walls of the play area, they watched Cree help a small crystalline being named Chime learn to control her sound-based reality manipulation. Where once Chime's emotional outbursts had shattered everything around her, now she created beautiful musical sculptures in the air. Guided by Cree's patient encouragement and the steady presence of her human companion, a boy named Marcus who had volunteered for the program. The bonding success rate is holding at 97%. Dr. Chen continued. The human children who've joined the program seem to have an instinctive understanding of how to provide emotional stability for Nexus beings. It's as if compassion itself is a universal language. Maya nodded, watching as more children arrived for the afternoon session. Some were human volunteers who had applied to be companions. Others were young aliens whose families had brought them to Earth seeking the new treatment protocol that was being called the Maya method throughout the galaxy. Council member Arya approached them, her own markings now displaying patterns of contentment that had been absent when they first met. As the center's alien relations coordinator, she had overseen the cultural integration that made such a facility possible. The latest council reports are beyond encouraging, Arya said, her musical voice filled with hope. 17 worlds have requested Earth's assistance in establishing their own compassion centers. The old isolation protocols are being retired across 12 star systems. Maya felt a surge of pride through her bond with Cree, who had paused in his play to smile at her across the room. Their connection had become the template for understanding how human Nexus bonds worked, studied not with invasive procedures but through careful observation and willing participation. Maya, Arya continued, there's something else. The Council has officially recognized Earth as a sanctuary world, the first in galactic history. Your species' approach to helping rather than controlling powerful beings has inspired changes in how we treat all forms of consciousness. Through the center's main windows, Maya could see the landing platforms where ships from dozens of worlds arrived daily. Some brought new children seeking help. Others carried diplomats and scientists eager to learn from Earth's methods. The most meaningful arrivals, though, were the families who came to reunite with children who had been lost to trauma and isolation. Enforcer Thane, who had been reassigned as the center's security coordinator, approached with his daily briefing. His role had changed dramatically from capturing Nexus beings to protecting them while they healed. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Perimeter scans show no threats today, he reported, though his mechanical voice now carried warmth that hadn't been there before. The Zephyrian refugee ship arrived this morning with 12 more children. All show signs of trauma-induced power instability, but the intake teams are confident about treatment prospects. Maya watched as human staff members, many of them children themselves, welcomed the new arrivals with the same gentle kindness she had shown Cree in the snow. Each new bond formed sent ripples of hope throughout the galaxy, proof that power and compassion could not only coexist but strengthen each other. Cree approached them, his movements fluid and confident in a way that the frightened, dying child Maya had rescued could never have managed. Behind him came his latest protege, a young being whose species Maya didn't recognize but whose need for comfort was universal. Maya, friend, Cree said, using both his musical language and the mental communication they shared. I wanted to introduce you to Echo. She arrived this morning from a world where Nexus beings are considered cursed. She has been alone for a very long time. Maya knelt down to Echo's level, seeing familiar fear and desperate hope in eyes that swirled with colors that had no names. Hi, Echo, I'm Maya. Would you like to hear about how I met Cree? As Maya began to tell the story of that snowy day when compassion had changed the galaxy, Echo's color-shifting eyes began to brighten. Around them, the Compassion Center hummed with the activities of dozens of species learning that differences were not threats to be contained, but gifts to be celebrated. Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet, documenting another small miracle in what had become a daily occurrence. The transformation of galactic policy through the simple act of an 8-year-old girl sharing her coat with a freezing child had proven that the smallest gestures could have the largest consequences. Outside, Snow began to fall again, but now it carried no threat. The Arctic landscape that had once seemed hostile and isolating had become a symbol of hope for beings across the galaxy. In the warmth of the center, children who had been abandoned by fear were finding families built on understanding. Maya looked out at the falling snow and remembered that terrifying, wonderful day when she had first heard crying in the storm. She had made a choice then without understanding its significance, guided only by the simple belief that no child should suffer alone. Now, as she watched Cree helping Echo take her first tentative steps toward trust, Maya understood that sometimes the most important decisions weren't made by governments or councils or enforcers. Sometimes they were made by children who saw need and responded with nothing more complex than kindness. The silver bond between her and Cree pulsed gently, carrying not just their shared emotions but the hopes of countless beings who had discovered that the universe was far more beautiful when its inhabitants chose connection over isolation, compassion over control. In the end, Maya thought, it really had been as simple as sharing a coat with someone who was cold. Everything else had grown from that single moment when humanity showed the galaxy what it meant to be truly human. To see suffering and choose to help, regardless of how different the sufferer might be. As the snow continued to fall outside the Compassion Center, Maya smiled and reached out to welcome another lost child home.